Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's episode of Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. Thank you so much for tuning in on this Wednesday night, ladies and gentlemen. I am the maestro, Jeremy Karp, alongside the most underpaid and underutilized umpire in America, the one, the only, Hollywood James Knox.
Evening, Jeremy. How we doing?
We're doing okay, best as we can. How we doing tonight, James?
About the same. About the same. Ready to dig in tonight.
You know, I will say this: I'm doing a lot better than probably the fans of the 100-win MLB teams that are constantly crying about a playoff format change just because their team didn't advance the LCS.
Don't like it, play better.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big theme of the entire thing. I mean, we could always just go back to how it was in the 1960s and 50s when if you didn't have the best record in your league, you're not making the playoffs.
Right.
Just best in the American, best in the national, going to the playoffs. There you go.
Well, it becomes a situation too where, I mean, if you don't like it, and we go back to that format, I mean, the game quits growing. There's no expansion. Your team may make the playoffs once every 5 to 10 years, and that's it. And, you could even go further back or not as far back, but even when you had the National League East and the National League West, and if you didn't win either one of the divisions and play for a chance to go to the World Series, you were at home. So, I mean, people are going to whine, like I said, and I think the title of this show is perfect. We are talking about whether it's sports teams or sports fans who feel that they should be entitled.
I was really searching for a picture of some of the MLB coaches and owners who have been complaining a lot lately about this situation, and I found one of an unnamed MLB manager, and with an interesting opinion.
Oh dear.
I mean, it's the best way you can describe how a lot of these front office figures and managers and even some players are feeling, in addition to the fan bases.
Turn them all into blueberries and float away.
Exactly. I mean, and it could totally be worse. I mean, you could have a game canceled for no reason and ruin your momentum, and basically playing a big role in costing yourself the series, though not the only reason.
Are you upset because your upstart Guardians got beat by the Yankees yesterday, Jeremy?
I'm going to tell you something about that. I'm actually just amazed they got it that far. When you start 16 rookies over the course of the season, you're basically putting the super team against the Bad News Bears. Just hoping that you have a shot. And when you take them to game 5, and this also will tie into my whole theory and reasoning about having a salary cap in MLB, because when you got a team with a payroll of $200+ million, and then you got the Guardians who are basically with the Dolans running it, it's $2 million.
Right.
It just shows the disparity. But that is for another time, folks. Be sure to submit your questions, and we will try to get them on the air because there is a lot to talk about, and we are going to kick it off right away with the MLB playoff format. Okay, so James and I had talked about this earlier before we were on the show. From 2012 to 2021, there was a different playoff format in Major League Baseball. With that format, if it had stayed the same into this year, the Braves and Mets, who both had the same record at the end of the season and everything, would have played a game 163 to determine who won the division. Meanwhile, the loser of that game would have faced the Padres in the wild card game for the right to face the Los Angeles Dodgers, who a 111-win season wasn't enough for them. Just ask the Mariners how they felt in 2001.
True.
Meanwhile, the winner of the NL East tiebreaker would have advanced to the best-of-5 series against the Cardinals, who themselves would have automatically reached the division series as opposed to having to play in the wild card series, which a lot of people definitely were furious about. When a team that wins 93 games has to play in the wild card after winning their division. Um, Meanwhile, the only thing that would have altered here, the Phillies, who are currently playing the Padres in the NLCS, wouldn't have made the playoffs at all. So they couldn't have absolutely embarrassed the Cardinals or the Braves. Isn't it funny how things work and times change, James?
It really does. And I mean, I like the new playoff series format, and it's only going to get, you're only going to get, I think they want to add one more team. I mean, that was the idea of coming out of the lockout, was that the owners wanted one more team, and the players kind of shot that down, saying, well, it oversaturates the playoffs. You're not putting enough, I guess, enough worth and enough meaning into the 162 game season. But I think ultimately I would too. I mean, cut the season down by 8 games, move it to 154, and then add another, playoff team. And that kind of makes up the revenue. But of course, if you don't make the playoffs, you don't get paid. So, I can see where people would be upset. And I mean, obviously the Cardinals wouldn't have had to play the Phillies, but so if the Phillies don't embarrass us, somebody else with, excellent pitching does. I just, I understand. Like I said, I understand people being mad, but I also get the fact that I've enjoyed the playoffs this year. I enjoyed seeing the Mariners make it. I enjoyed seeing the Guardians go as far as they did. Though, I wanted the Mariners to beat the Astros. I mean, let's not forget the 18-inning marathon between the Mariners and Astros that ultimately put Seattle out of the playoffs. But that's intriguing baseball. I mean, those are matchups that, you hope to have down the road. I mean, I was cheering for the Orioles to make it. If you don't have the expanded format, then the Baltimore Orioles don't have a chance to make it. So, it gives teams that incentive not to tank.
Right.
And I think it makes the trade deadline more interesting because more teams are involved in a playoff race at that time. I mean, what good is it and what fun is it if 20 out of the 32 baseball teams have already been eliminated by the time we get to August? It's no fun. I mean, we saw that with the Cubs, the Pirates, and the Reds in our own division.
And then you look at teams like the Athletics, the Nationals, let's see, the Tigers, Royals. I mean, a lot of teams were already out by that point. And even the Red Sox, interestingly enough, because everybody else in the division was just so good this year.
Right.
It's interesting. So we talk about the teams that won 100-plus games this year. Of them, only one is left in the playoffs as of this show, and that is the Houston Astros, who, for the third time in 6 years, are playing the Yankees in the ALCS, because that's just what everybody wants to see, is the Houston Astros versus the New York Yankees in the LCS. Nevertheless, so in 1995, a fourth team was added to the playoff field in each league. 40 teams since then have won 100 games or more. Of those 39, of the 39 seasons have concluded, this is how far they've gotten. Remember, we're excluding how the Astros are right now. There's been 5 World Series champions that have won 100 games. 6 teams have lost in the World Series. Unfortunately, the Cardinals were one of them in 2004. Yep. 8 of them, including the 05 Cardinals, lost in the LCS. Mm-hmm. 19 of them have lost in the division series. And 1 measly team lost in the wild card series.
Yep.
Wonder who that is. Sorry, Mets fans. So, and of those, 17 of them lost to teams with worse records. On average, with 8 or 9 wins less than the teams they beat. So, it's amazing that, look, you have 162 game season, by far the most of any professional sport. And that is a gauntlet to get through. And you finally reach the October baseball playoff field. That said, believe it or not, I heard this from a good friend of mine, and he said just because you have the best record doesn't necessarily make you the best team.
Right.
And that's 100% true. And that goes for any sport. I think for baseball, though, it definitely rings true because it's about getting hot at the very end. You look at football, football is an 18-week season. You have a week in between each game, most cases, to get ready. Basketball and hockey are about 81 games. And then you got MLB, which is 162. So literally double that.
Yep.
Obviously, what would you rather do? We're not saying you'd rather tank the beginning of the season, but would you rather have a losing record heading into the All-Star break or having a maybe a 20 loss season up until the All-Star break and then collapse afterwards?
Well, I think it's the thing too is like you may not be able to win a championship in April or May, but you can lose one there. And I think we forget, looking at the format change as well. Go back to 2011 and 2006. Yeah, the last two World Series champions that the Cardinals have produced, both of them were wild card teams. I mean, you forget that in 06, that team stumbled down the stretch. 83 wins is what got them into the playoffs. They got hot at the right time, knocked off the Padres, got rid of the Mets, and then you dispatched the Tigers in the World Series. You look at 2011, they get on the very last day when the Phillies beat the Braves. Chris Carpenter at the time, shut out the Astros. You win 5-0. You get hot, you go through, you get rid of the Brewers, and then the next thing you know, you're getting rid of the Texas Rangers. So it's just one of those things. Baseball is one of those sports where it's all about timing and how hot you get at the right time. And
exactly.
We've talked about this where the Cardinals have, at one point in time, the Cardinals were Clayton Kershaw's kryptonite. And at those times, those Dodgers teams were the best team in the league. Those were the teams that had guys like Matt Kemp and Yasiel Puig and Adrian Gonzalez and Clayton Kershaw and you name it, they had them, and the Cardinals were able to dispatch them. So, I mean, it's all about timing. And yes, I understand what people are like, well, you could be hot going into the playoffs and win 100 games and have a bye in the first round, and then all of a sudden the other team has the chance to build momentum. And look, that's fine. I understand that. But good teams find ways to overcome that and still become successful and win series. It didn't happen in the National League, but flip the coin and look at the American League, and the Yankees and Astros were both successful doing so.
Exactly. And when it comes to this whole thing, I mean, here's another thing. So some people have called for the division series, which has historically been a best of 5, to go to the best of 7 format, like the LCS and the World Series. Last year, the wild card series was just one game, winner go in, the other go home.
Right.
Next time, don't play Altreyas.
No doubt.
Anyway, nevertheless, you look at the format. I never had a problem with the best of 5 because the division series is always less than the NLCS.
Always.
And then of course World Series, the head honcho of it all. I mean, if you want to increase it, then it's like, well, make the World Series best of 9. Nobody wants that. Like, yeah. Then we got a comment coming in from and it says the Cardinals
that's what I was looking at after I said that, I was like, that ain't right. Yeah, I mean, but still, I mean, look at it, still 83 wins. I mean, that wouldn't win you a division nowadays. And I think that was more so what I was trying to say was that if you were going to stumble into the playoffs, then, I mean, I think the premise is still there because they were not supposed to be a better team than either of the teams they beat in 06.
No, they really weren't. And especially the Mets. The Mets in 06 were the team favorited to go to the World Series. And we know the luck that the Cardinals definitely had at the end of getting, in the end of 2011, and getting to the postseason and everything. I'll never forget that 13-inning thriller between the Phillies and the Braves. Just like, oh my gosh, please.
Right.
One time I actually wanted Philadelphia to win the game.
Right.
And then you go to the American League, where there is only the Astros and the Yankees that basically made significant noise this year. When I look at teams like Cleveland, like Tampa, like Seattle, yes, those were surprising teams, but none of them particularly stood out. The Guardians weren't expected to win the division. They weren't even expected to make the playoffs. This was supposed to be the Twins or the White Sox division to take. It's just they collapsed.
Is Tampa really a surprising team? I mean, it seems like we're surprised every year they make the playoffs, but they've been there more so than these other, I guess, quote unquote, small market teams that probably should be playing in a different city. You know, do we still consider them a surprise?
No, I don't consider them a surprise. The only thing that upset me was the Orioles not making it to the playoffs. That I would have loved. I would have loved the Orioles making it to the playoffs. But I look at the Tampa Bay Rays. It was no surprise to me that it wasn't going to go well when they faced the Yankees. It was a surprise to me that the Mariners had that massive comeback against the Blue Jays. But of course, yet again, you face the Astros, and look what happens.
Let me ask you a question real quick. You know, we don't complain about the format of the men's basketball NCAA tournament. We love the fact that in the first round we get the upsets, but we always love the fact that the blue bloods are there at the end. How's that any different? I mean, we love the fact that there are upsets early on, but we always expect, you know, whether it's Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, Gonzaga, whatever, to be there in the Final Four. And then we get mad at the way the Major League Baseball playoffs are set up because why? I mean,
well,
if you're going to tell me it's because the top two teams get buys, how many in all of history, there's been one 16 seed that's beat a 1 seed. And yes, there's been a handful of 15 seeds that have beat 2 seeds. But for the most part, you just throw the ball out there and the higher seed wins. So what's the difference?
I think the big thing, and this is just my honest opinion, I think it has to do with money. I think it's because you look at the money that these major league athletes make. They figure, I mean, I think the perfect example is Aaron Judge.
Right.
Look at the history he set this season. Guy almost made it to 70 home runs. He broke Roger Maris's record that stood for over 60 years.
Yep.
As far as most home runs by an American League hitter. Fans don't want to see that type of history happen, only for him and the Yankees to be eliminated in, let's just say for the sake of it, a wild card series or the divisional series.
And tell him to be a better postseason player.
I think the perfect one was Dave Roberts and the Dodgers. To me, they're the perfect example for this whole situation. Like we said, won 111 games, one of the best records all time in Major League Baseball. And before the season even started, what did Dave Roberts do? He said, "We already know we're going to be World Series champions. Go ahead and crown us. We're already the champs. You know, we're confident enough." And because, whenever anybody ever predicts that they're going to be the champions, that's exactly how it's going to end up. It's never the opposite. I mean, and I also feel like with the Padres, okay, we talked so much on this show about the Soto sweepstakes heading into the trade deadline back in August.
Yep.
And how the Cardinals should have made a move and what could have happened, what it could have, should have, whatnot. Anyway, what happened when the Padres got Soto and Josh Bell and Hader? They were struggling. We didn't know what the hell was going to happen to them. We didn't know they were going to make the playoffs. I feel like once the playoffs kicked in, I mean, they knew they had something to prove. This team, known for futility throughout much of its history, I mean, it was only either this year or last year that they finally threw a no-hitter in their history.
Yeah.
And they've been around since the 70s, keep in mind. So I look at them, and they are definitely one of those teams that is riding the hype train. Meanwhile, the Phillies are riding the momentum train.
Yeah.
The The Padres were expected to be where they're at right now, based on the team they have and the moves they made. Not a single person expected the Phillies to be at this spot. You expected either the Dodgers or the Braves to be in the spot the Phillies are at right now.
And even look, the Phillies fired Joe Girardi earlier this year. I mean, they made a managerial switch. And, I mean, we all thought, well, geez, it's going to be the Braves and the Mets in that division. And while it was, that addition of that last wild card made it possible for them to get in. And, so you've got – and the fact that the Brewers completely fell off the map. I'm with you. I like – there's really – while we can sit here and listen to people complain and try to, I guess make sense of why we do or why we don't like it. Obviously it's going to expand again, I would imagine. And I like the format. I think it adds more intrigue to the postseason. But my biggest fear, and it didn't happen this year, thankfully, is that a team with a losing record is going to end up in the playoffs. But we've seen that happen in the NFL too, and
that was when the Rams made it with the losing
and that was the Marshawn Lynch game where he went all Skittles. Remember,
Seahawks,
that was
Seahawks. It was the Seahawks and the Rams in 2010, Bradford's rookie year.
Yep.
Or either rookie year, second year, whatever. And the winner of that game would have gone to the postseason. Seahawks won, and then they went in against who? The defending Super Bowl champion, New Orleans Saints.
Yep.
And Seahawks won by Marshawn Lynch just embarrassed him. He went beast mode. The cheers of the crowd there absolutely went off so much that it was actually recorded on the Richter scale.
Yep.
That produced a small earthquake.
That was the Sunday night game where the Rams got beat by Charlie Whitehurst. Clipboard Jesus beat them 16-6.
I love Clipboard Jesus. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so with the MLB, okay. So you look at the NBA playoffs, for example. The team with the best record, the number one seed, which over 82 games proved why they deserve to be the number one seed. They have advantages in home court and obviously the talent over the 8th seeded team that they will end up facing. But look at that. So since the playoffs expanded to 16 teams in 83 and 84, just 5 top seeds have fallen in the first round. And some of those happened when it was all best of 5 still.
Can I bring something up real quick? I just got an alert on my phone that is fixing to drive me nuts. And this is going to be a topic for another time, and it's going to depress us both. Harrison Bader has hit more home runs in the postseason
I know where this is
than
going.
the Cardinals scored total runs in 2 games.
This is my issue with that. And this is okay. I will say this though.
Jeff Albert. Oh.
Well, that's one thing. But also, I'm just gonna say it. And there are some home runs that are hit where Harrison Bader has hit them that it would be a double or, with Harrison Bader's speed, probably just a triple at Busch Stadium. Now, with that said, Harrison Bader is proving what Matt Carpenter is proving. That just because they leave the Cardinals doesn't mean their career is dead.
So
you gotta trust. Eric, one quick thing. So look at what the Yankees. I feel like the trade. We talked about this as well. Everybody thought the
benefited both teams.
It was a good end on both teams for Montgomery, and both the Cardinals. The Cardinals gave up on Bader, and the Yankees gave up on Montgomery. Look, they switched teams. The Yankees waited patiently for Bader, something the Cardinals were not going to do.
I don't know if we could afford to do. Oh, hell, we still don't have an outfielder who's consistent. You got maple syrup.
You have to afford to, though.
You've got maple syrup in left field. You've got Newbar in right field, and you've got a 23-year-old Dylan Carlson in center field that doesn't. He can't hit left-handed.
The thing of it is with the outfielder, I was going to say, and it doesn't even come back as to fielding, let alone just fielding and hitting. Bader was at least good at both. It was just the injuries started to catch up. I
Right.
feel now, and I get it. Now, the Cardinals aren't exactly known for going all in when it comes to money. We're not saying Harrison Bader deserved a big max contract type thing here. But at the same time, you just mentioned my point right there. With the issues the Cardinals have in the outfield, there is a reason you should be patient on waiting for Harrison Bader to come back because he was going to come back. I think that's the point people fail to realize here is that Harrison Bader was going to come back. This was not a season-ending injury. And
So
if you
here's the
believed in your team enough that when they make the playoffs, if they make the playoffs, well, then boom, you got Bader back and not all these strikeout swing and miss outfielders.
So, all right now. So I like this, Jeremy. So the other thing I was going to say was I looked at there's a thing on Twitter. It's called oh hell, I can't even remember the name of it. But anyway, it's like projected home run. So it shows like if they would have been a home run in like whatever parks. And so Carpenter hit 15 home runs this year. 13 of those 15 would have been home runs at Busch Stadium. And the 3 home runs that Bader hit in the postseason so far would have all been home runs at Busch.
Right. And
it's frustrating. And I know that's a completely different conversation for another time. But, you know, that's the other thing, too, that I will go back on here. We talk about these top seeds that get upset in the playoff format now. Look, this just causes you at the trade deadline to go out and, you know, get players that can help you keep that from happening, whether it's getting a timely hit or making a timely diving catch or whatever else. Here's the other thing, and this is the other thing that plays into this new format. Understand starting next year, you play everybody. You're playing a balanced schedule now. So, you know, maybe front offices, probably not the Cardinals, but maybe front offices go out and think that we've got to get the big splash player now because we're not going to play the lowly Cubs, the lowly Reds, or the lowly Pirates 18 times a year.
You know, there's another cliche, another old saying out there. You know, I mentioned what my friend said about, you know, it's not just because you have the best record doesn't mean you're the best team. Well, I think
Right.
another one is it's not who you play, it's when you play them.
Right.
And for hindsight of this, we talk about, oh, well, it's not fair that the Dodgers lost to the Padres the way they did. Okay, well, guess what? In the regular season, the Dodgers were 14-5 against the Padres. The Braves beat the Phillies 5 out of 7 times in September alone. Let's not act like all season long the Phillies and the Padres were just dominating. They were the one crack in the armor for the Dodgers and the Braves. No, the Dodgers and the Braves did their damage in the division. And a big part of that late season surge that the Braves had, because remember, it was a while that the Braves weren't even in the hunt.
Right.
For the title, for the division. And it took a big September surge, basically the opposite of 2011. And they won, and part of that was because of the 5 out of 7 they took from the Phillies. It was from the sweep they got of the Mets.
Yep.
I mean, they got hot at the perfect time.
Yep.
Now, this is the thing. The NFL's new format, because the NFL recently expanded their playoffs. It used to be the top 2 teams in each conference got a bye.
Yep.
Now it's just the top one, which is great for competition. Instead of automatically knowing the Chiefs and Bills are going to get a bye week, now you're going to wonder, especially after last week, are the Bills going to get the bye week or are the Chiefs going to get the bye week? We damn sure know it's not going to be the Denver Broncos. Nevertheless, because Russ is too busy not cooking.
That's right. Mr. Limited.
So now you got one bye week or one team with a bye week in the AFC and in the NFC and the NFL. Well, the reward for the regular season in the MLB is a bye in the opening round.
Right.
And I think that is more important now than ever, given the fact that the way pitchers are used now as compared to what they were 30, even 20 years ago, a big controversy of the ALDS was whether or not the Guardians were going to pitch Shane Bieber,
Yep.
given the fact that if they advanced to the LCS, he wouldn't be ready right away. Meanwhile, you flash back to guys like Lolich and Gibson, they're just going to pitch whenever their arm feels like it. Hey, you awake? Yep. All right, let's go on out there. I mean, the times have changed, and because of that, the bodies have become more fragile in baseball.
Oh, God, yeah.
And because of that, that is why you look at the way teams manage a lot differently than they used to. And that is why the opening round bye is so crucial now more than ever.
Right. You're right. And look, the teams that lost, to a wild card team, look, you had the chance to set up your rotation. You had a chance to get everybody healthy. And back to the Indians, but gosh, I knew I was going to say it sooner or later, back to the Guardians. The problem being is like, okay, so let's save our best pitcher in case we make it. Well, if you lose, there is no tomorrow. Well, I would have started Bieber and started Aaron Savali tonight because, well, you're losing game one of a series instead of the deciding game. But again, I mean, you look, Nestor for the Yankees pitched on short rest. He had no problem coming out and pitching well. So, I mean, the rain helped because initially in game 5, it was supposed to be Jamison Tyon for the Yankees. So they used it to their advantage. And, why the Guardians didn't, I don't know. But you are correct in the fact that pitchers are handled so gingerly anymore that you feel like in between innings, they have to, their managers have to powder their asses to make sure they're happy.
Yeah. And it's interesting you bring up, rotations and everything. Because once again, the Cardinals won their series, the division. So they had the chance to set their rotation. And then you got teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees and all them who were like, okay, let's really figure out who we're pitching here. I want to take you back to this, and the Washington Post brings up something that really caught my attention. And I think this also you can kind of include when we talk about the COVID season, the shortened season back in 2020. A lot of people considered the Dodgers World Series title illegitimate. Because it was in a shortened season, and they didn't have to work as hard, even though, look, winning one game is just as hard as winning any.
Hell, staying healthy enough to even play in that season was tough enough.
Exactly. And so the Washington Post put out, what if the Phillies win the World Series this year, it would make them the lowest, like the team with the fewest wins in the multiple wild card round era to win the World Series. And it was asked, does that make them an illegitimate World Series champion? Hardly. Because no one, for example, like you've mentioned, no one's taken away the trophy from the 06 Cardinals.
Right.
No one's taken it from the 87 Twins. Upsets are upsets can be the most depressing thing in sports. They're some of the best things in sports.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget. It was like 2000, maybe 13 or 14, when the freaking Colt McCoy-led Cleveland Browns beat Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. And then the week before that, what did they do? They beat Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. Look, I'll take a 2-week span of wins over 2 Hall of Famers any day now. So upsets, and I think the perfect example, look at the 2011 Cardinals. Nobody expected them to get into the playoffs, and when they did, look, you got to face the mighty Phillies and Roy Halladay, who's having one of the best years of his career. You play the Brewers, who were dominating the division and were projected to go to the World Series for the first time since '82. And then even when the Cardinals beat them, the Rangers, they got this. They slid under everyone's radar. They're going to do this. I mean, hell, the beginning of that season, everyone predicted the Phillies and Yankees to make it and nobody else show up.
Right.
So
they're still sending Christmas cards to Nelson Cruz.
Exactly. I know. I'm guessing you just drop off the cards.
No, I throw them over his head. Try to make him catch it.
Oh, God. Every time I watch the video, I still worry if he's going to catch it or not, even though it's literally been like 11 years and I know exactly what's
Right.
going to happen. It just that's the sports fan in you, but that's the thing. Upsets are one of the greatest things in sports. Some of the best stories are the underdogs in sports.
It's true.
I mean, look at the 99 St. Louis Rams. Look at the 2019 St. Louis Blues. I feel like St. Louis is just like upset city.
Well,
because whenever they have the best record, they don't do shit.
It's because people see us as a small market. I mean, the Midwest is flyover country. We're not taking. I really don't feel like we're taking as serious as the East Coast or the West Coast, or even some of like teams in the South, like the Braves and maybe even like in hockey, like the Dallas Stars for the longest time because of how successful they were in the playoffs. But I think that. You talk about underdogs. I mean, we could have our own literal own show on just like underdog wins that the city of St. Louis has put out. The 99 Rams is a great one. You come into the season, you think you've got everything, everything looks good, and then Trent Green gets hit cheaply by Rodney Harrison and the Chargers. So boom, you got that. And then here comes Kurt Warner, who was bagging groceries at a Hy-Vee in Iowa and played for the Iowa Barnstormers of the Arena League, and the next thing you know, you're hoisting the Lombardi Trophy in Atlanta. You look at the Blues, who coming into January of 2019 were in last place. It took a coaching change. You got rid of Mike Yeo and brought in Craig Berube, and at a bar in Philadelphia, Gloria was born, and Jordan Bennington gets the shutout win against the Flyers, and then next thing you know, you're hoisting the Stanley Cup in the middle of June in Boston on their ice. So, there's what is going to make whoever wins this World Series special. And this is the last thing I have on this. You're playing, especially if it's a wild card team, whether it's the Phillies, the Padres, you're looking at it going, they had to play an extra round. And so maybe this means a little bit more than a previous World Series championship. The Phillies' last one was in 2008 when they beat the Rays. The Padres, I think you have to go all the way back to, I don't even know when their last championship was. If they won, have they won one?
The Rays have never won. The last time I can remember them being in the World Series was
I'm talking about the Padres.
Oh, the Padres. No, the Padres have never won.
I didn't
Last
think
time
so.
they were in the World Series
was 98 against the Yankees,
which
and then 84 and then 84 against the Tigers.
Which I believe the Tigers won that one.
They did because that was the year that the Padres knocked off the Cubs in the in LCS. But so I mean, that's what makes sports special, and that's what will make it even more special this year. Is if you've got a team like the Padres or the Phillies who win it all. They had to play an extra round. And there's a part of me that's cheering for the Yankees because to tie it all in and come full circle because of Harrison Bader and Matt Carpenter. But, I'm also a National League fan. So if you have your druthers, I'd like the Phillies to win because ultimately the Cardinals would have lost to the World Series champion.
And that's another thing I want to bring into that conversation. So when you look at wild card team. Okay, so both teams that are left in the National League are wild card teams. One team that is left in the American League is a wild card team, that being the New York Yankees, because they won 99 games and they played the Rays in the wild card. Because they had to play the Guardians in the
Yeah, but I thought the Yankees won that division. I thought they were one. I thought
but that doesn't matter. Remember, because look at the Cardinals. They won the division, but they didn't.
Well, what I meant to say was I thought they were one of the teams that got the bye.
No, because the Astros have the better record.
Okay, so the Astros, yeah, but you had two teams that get byes. Remember?
Huh?
It's the one bye's in the NFL. The two byes are in the.
You're right. I got it mixed up. Well, then I guess MLB needs to change it because the Maestro got confused. No, you're right. Okay, so it's basically the wild card teams versus division winning teams in the battle in MLB right now. Because basically a wild card team is going to play a division winner that got a bye and had to play one less round.
There you go.
There you go. Nevertheless, yeah, you're right because I actually think it was Cleveland that played.
It was Cleveland that
It
played
was
the Rays.
Cleveland. You know why? Because it was oh yeah, the walk-off home run and everything. I
Yep.
remember now.
Yep.
See, it's all coming back to me. Getting old sucks, James.
All right, man. I understand it. Trust me.
Yeah. So anyway, what happened was you look at the Padres and Phillies. A lot of fans are really starting to rally behind these teams. I brought this up to a friend of mine yesterday. I told him, and I used a different team as an example, but we're going to use the Cardinals as an example in this one. Now I'm going to ask
Okay.
you. So say you're on the Cardinals, we're Cardinals fans. They lost to the Phillies. Would you rather the Phillies win the World Series and say to yourself, look, we lost to the better team, or watch a team like the Padres or Astros or Yankees absolutely dominate them and realize, wow, we could have actually beaten them?
Yeah, I would take the previous. I would rather the Phillies just go ahead and win it all. I don't want to be that team going, damn, had we just been able to score runs or been able to hang on to game one, you don't know what would have happened the rest of the series. If we win that series, we could have been there. And I don't. It's tough because I don't think that even if the Cardinals get past Philadelphia, I don't think they had the firepower to beat the Braves. Um, the Phillies and the Braves, they played each other all year long in the NL East. So I think the familiarity there helped them win that series. I don't want to be that person. So, I'm perfectly fine if the Phillies decide to go on a run and win it all. I don't like a lot of the personalities on that team, but as a whole, I think that the Cardinals are closer to looking at the Phillies. And when the Cardinals look at themselves in the mirror going, man, we have a guy that can hit home runs. We have a guy that can put the ball in play, similar to a Schwarber or Bryce Harper, who is absolutely caught fire. But you look at that, and that was really the difference in that series. Their guys got hot, our guys didn't. But, you're closer to the makeup of a team like that instead of like these teams like the Yankees, the Astros, that are not afraid to push the luxury tax and pay those big salaries, because it will never happen that way in St. Louis. So I'm of the mindset that I would rather the Phillies, especially them being a wild card team, being the underdog, go ahead and just winning it and putting it to rest. I got to be honest with you though, but since the Cardinals have been eliminated, I haven't watched a whole lot of baseball. It's one of those things where it
Sorry.
I was like that when the Blues get eliminated in the playoffs. Like, it's hard to watch anymore because I'm just like, man, we could have been there. We could have
Well, the
done
way
it.
the Blues got eliminated last year was absolutely depressing.
Because Nassim Kadri's a punk ass bitch. Hey, look, he ran my guy Bennington over. Okay, that's the only reason they won that series. But
and
we'll get into hockey. We'll get into the NHL here in a minute. But I just I'm of the mindset that I would rather see the underdog and the team that knocked us out go ahead and win it all.
Yeah, and I do want to confirm that the San Diego Padres have beaten the Phillies 8-5 here in Game 2 of the NLCS. So we are tied
right at one
apiece. The Phillies won last night 2-0, which seems to be the only score they ever win these days. So yeah, now you got yourself a series. Meanwhile,
right.
The Houston Astros are leading the Yankees 1-0 into the top of the third.
I got an update there.
But something just change?
Yeah, Yankees and Astros are now tied at 1.
Okay, well, yeah, screw me. This is why James is the insider here.
Oh, God. Do you want to know who tied it up?
Let me guess. Harrison Bader.
He had a solo home run.
Oh my gosh. Harrison Bader, baby.
This kid's on, and it was off of Verlander.
Wow.
Yeah, man. Holy hell.
I mean, it's okay. I mean, Randy Flores and Michael Gersh got extended, so
there you go.
We're set. Cardinals are set. Anyway, so we're going to move on now to the latest of the NHL.
All right.
And it's interesting timing because a little bit after the show is over tonight, the St. Louis Blues will be playing the Seattle Kraken in just the second game of their season.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy because at the end of the year, they're going to be playing 31 games in 62 days. Meanwhile, they've played at this point, one game in basically a week.
Yeah. I mean, and go back to when Nashville and San Jose opened the season over in Prague in the Czech Republic. So that opened up October 7th. The Kraken, when they face the Blues tonight, will be playing their 5th game of the season, while the Blues have played. This will be their 2nd. And a lot of that has apparently there was obviously, some scheduling issues at Enterprise Center. The Who was there last week. There were some other concerts, and the Blues, they wanted the Blues to start at home. Ultimately, yes, everybody plays 82 games, but you are right. Boy, is that going to be rough playing 31 games in 62 days. That obviously includes travel, but still trying to get some game notes on tonight's game. Pavel Buchnevich could miss tonight's game. He had a maintenance day yesterday, was off the ice early this morning. Josh Levo, if that is the case, would hop into the lineup. Levo would be making his St. Louis Blues debut tonight. And goaltender-wise, it does look like it's going to be Jordan Binnington for the Blues. And I'm guessing from what I'm looking at from Seattle Kraken in their practice, it will be Philip Grubauer who will get the start tonight for the Kraken. He is 0-1-1 with a 4.27 goals against average and a save percentage of .851. So,
Damn.
yeah.
Looking at the start of this season, so Fansided has had they came out on Monday with their power rankings, and they had the Blues ranked 6th, despite only playing one game. And a big part of that was because of Vladimir Tarasenko, because the man who at one point, not only was everything completely botched up with him and his shoulder, he wanted out of St. Louis. He was ready to go. The Blues were just hesitant on the whole thing. It was a PR mess.
Oh, God.
Regarding the organization and Vladimir Tarasenko.
Really was.
Nevertheless, it was like none of that ever happened when they played their first game against the Blue Jackets. I mean, he had 2 goals. He looked like he hadn't lost a step or a skate, whatever you want to call it. And on top of that, the thing I loved most about the Blues in their first game, besides the fact they won, was the fact that they looked like they were a fresh oiled machine. So many times last year, and I definitely want your thoughts on this, it just looked like they lacked the communication and the flow that you would expect out of a team with the expectations that they have.
So we all know that the most dangerous lead in hockey is a 2-goal lead, and especially if you're a St. Louis Blues fan, you're very familiar with that. So they jump out to a quick 2-0 lead against Columbus. Columbus scores 2 goals in 18 seconds to tie it up. And then the Blues return the favor, scoring 2 goals in 21 seconds to take a 4-2 lead before Tarasenko added the 5th goal of the evening to give you a 5-2 victory. So in times last year, we saw this where if they gave up the 2-goal lead, especially if Binnington were in between the pipes, that he would kind of hang his head. The team would then they'd get really tight, play really tight, start making more mistakes. And as soon as before you knew it, that 2-goal cushion you had became a 2-goal deficit. And you're right, the communication was there. There were many times where you could hear on the ice, thanks to the mics on the ice down there, where you could hear guys, where it was Falk talking to Parayko or Parayko talking to Leddy, or, you could just hear guys like Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou, going up, or, you can hear them tapping their sticks as they're coming down the ice. And that's all, that is communication that you need. You also heard during the broadcast, Darren Pang and John Kelly both saying, hey, look, we saw games last year where they would give up those leads, and Darren Pang would talk about how quiet it was on the bench. And that's, there was quite the opposite last Saturday night. So good communication. It's got to be tough to have, play one game and then sit as long as they have. You're watching all these other teams play and you're sitting there. So hopefully they come out looking like that well-oiled machine tonight. Seattle, again, they played over the weekend and they played Monday night, losing both those games. So I think that the Blues, sometimes they don't keep down the opponents that they need to. Tonight's one of those times where I think they'll have no problem with Seattle.
Yeah, and it's interesting. If you, I know it's super early in the season, but they had said where if the season ended on Monday, the Kraken would have been in the playoffs because they had an overtime loss.
Right.
And one point's all it needs, and that's the interesting thing I do love about hockey in the NHL is how you get your points. You can still get one. You just got to take it to overtime.
Right.
But I would prefer less anxiety in my life. So having the Blues just come out right and win this game in dominant fashion tonight would be welcome to see.
And tonight is a national telecast. This is on TNT. So I and I'm not a fan of the TNT broadcasts. I really do like John Kelly and Darren Pang. However, I think we get Pang as the on ice. What's the word I'm looking for here? Analyst, the on ice
Right.
analyst tonight. And then
Which
I'm
they do a
guessing
good job with. I like when they have him on.
I do too, as long as it's not Pierre McGuire. I'm glad he is gone. God, I could not stand him and hated any game we had on NBC Sports Network. But TNT's done a good job. So I think tonight's Kenny Albert and Darren Pang. So I know that the great thing about hockey is with adding the Seattle Kraken, we're growing the game. And I think it's one of those games where people can get into it, but they don't always understand all the rules. But so it's kind of hockey 101 tonight.
It's interesting. You mentioned about growing the game of hockey. For the longest time, Gary Bettman, the lovely commissioner of the NHL, was just absolutely despised, and to an extent, he still is,
Yep.
for basically Americanizing the game that began in Canada. That said, he's done his part to help rectify some of that. Not only has he brought back the Winnipeg Jets, from Atlanta because they just weren't succeeding at all, whether it be in attendance or performance in Atlanta. So now you're starting to grow the Canadian audience in certain provinces again. On top of that, you're taking basically the mountainous regions in the West, as well as in the Northwest, which was always dominated by the Canucks in Vancouver. But now you add the Vegas Golden Knights and you add the Seattle Kraken, two teams which are especially, well, I should say, especially the Golden Knights, which have already made an immediate impact in the league, and the Kraken, which, as far as attendance and fandom go, have definitely made an impact already.
Right.
And the way I look at it, a little competition never hurts when it comes to competing markets.
Right.
As much as I absolutely love the Blues, I will say this: it would be different for sure if the Blues were the only Midwestern market team. Obviously, that is not the case. You got yourself the Wild. You got yourself the Blackhawks out in Chicago. I know we can't stand them, but they're there.
Right.
And you can even go. You got the Predators. And you even got yourself. You want to expand a little bit to the east. You got yourself the Blue Jackets, who are starting to get a lot of Midwestern attention.
Well, I would say don't forget the Dallas Stars as well. I mean, they still have fans in Minnesota that, when they were the North Stars, and you're right. It's really that quarter there, and you're right. God, I hate the Chicago Blackhawks, but, when both the Blues and the Hawks are good, those are outstanding games. It's just like the Blues and the Predators, that little I-24 rivalry there. You've got, those are wonderful rivalries. We'll see that with Sporting KC and STL City, in the MLS starting next year. So those geographic rivalries are that's what makes this sport so good. And you look at the West Coast, you've got Vegas, obviously their first year in, they get to the Stanley Cup Finals and lose to the Capitals, but they had that. I mean, everybody, even us Blues fans, we were drawn to their game presentation just because it was something new. It was a great rivalry. They were a good team. The rivalry that they have with the Kings and with, I would say, the Coyotes, but the Coyotes have to. That's a different story too. They've got to get out of Arizona because they are at the same point as Atlanta was when the Thrashers were there.
Believe it or not, I feel like If Kansas City didn't have such an issue with stadiums,
Right. That would be the perfect place to
that
put
would
them
be the perfect place.
because
That's
they're
the
already
thing.
playing in the Central Division anyway now.
Exactly, and that's the thing. They're already playing in the Central Division. Meanwhile, it's just the Kansas City area doesn't know what they're going to do with Kauffman Stadium
No,
or Arrowhead Stadium for that
no.
matter. Which, first off, why do anything? Because they're both iconic stadiums,
Right.
like design wise and fandom wise. Of course, then you get to share a parking lot, which also helps for the sake of. I mean, look at I believe I forget the exact name of it, but it's like Sports Center Park in Philadelphia, where Lincoln Financial Field and Citizens Bank Park is.
Right.
And they don't have an issue with that. And there's all these other multimedia centers and whatnot. And that's basically almost right in downtown Philly, as opposed to 20 minutes out, like
So yeah.
Kansas City.
So I was going to ask you, does Kansas have you been to Sporting KC Soccer Park?
I have not.
Is it separate, like away from Arrowhead and,
Yes,
and Kaufman? Okay.
that it is. It's away from. In fact, it's
Is it more in
actually
the gas and light district or
um, it's actually in Kansas City, Kansas.
okay?
So that's the
So it's
interesting
across
thing.
the border there in the river.
Yes, it is actually because we had done a past tournament on I-70 Sports Media and regarding to the best Missouri sports moments. And when one of them included Sporting KC, a lot of fans had called out the fact that, hey, Sporting KC is in Kansas. And we're like, okay,
Gotcha.
we get that, but we're going to include them for the sake of the area, for
Right.
the metro area type thing.
Right.
Like, that's like we're including the Illini football,
Yeah.
the Fighting Illini football, which also shout out to the Illini for already clinching bowl eligibility, having a fantastic season. They're 6-1 right now. Um, just unbelievable. Chase Brown has had, I believe, 7 1,000-yard rushing, or not
The kid's
1,000,
legit.
7 100-yard rushing games. Already over 1,000 yards rushing on the season. He's a dark horse Heisman candidate.
Kid's legit.
Kid is legit, and it just blows my mind. Like last week, they defeated Minnesota 26-14. They're ranked 18th as of right now. The week before that, they beat oh gosh darn it, they beat Wisconsin 34-10. This week, honestly, this is just them preying on another team. They are going to beat Nebraska.
Oh God.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let's be real here. Nebraska is just waiting for it. Um, and I look at how this team is led. There's just this energy. Like, okay, anyway, Chase Brown. So we're heading into week 8. Chase Brown, 192 carries, 1,059 yards, 4 touchdowns. The kid averages 5.5 yards a carry.
It's pretty good.
Like, and he's already in the top 5 all time in Illinois in rushing yardage, which just blows my mind. So it's like, and he's a junior, so there's a chance he's either going to come back for his senior year or he might go to the draft. And when you look at some of these NFL teams that are going to be the free agent running back market, and this is just a quick sidetrack before we get back. The free agent running back class, I don't know if you've taken a look at it lately. There is a lot of high profile names that are going to be
They really
hitting that
are.
market next year.
Mm-hmm.
Kareem Hunt, Josh Jacobs, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook. I mean, these guys are. That's why a lot of teams are hesitant to trade for a running back, because they say, look, we can hold out a few for a season.
Right.
We sign someone big. And here's Russ or Jack's history brought it up. James Robinson, Mizzou product, will be a free agent too. And James Robinson, I think, because it's interesting you brought that up, Jags, because Travis Etienne is starting to eat away at the carries James Robinson gets for the Jaguars, and because of that, I feel like Robinson's just become a liability for the team. So I could definitely see him, if not being moved before the trade deadline, definitely signing somewhere else.
Right.
Although if I
So
was Jacksonville, I'd keep them.
right. So we were talking about, and I want to go back to the stadium issue,
Yes,
with
please.
Kansas City, because I really think that Arizona, I mean, that would be a great rivalry for the Blues. And we saw that they
I
played a
agree.
preseason game against Arizona and Kansas City as well in Wichita, where the Wichita minor league hockey team plays. My question about Kansas City is Kemper Arena. Are there still events held there? I mean, I know they play college basketball there, but I mean, that would be a perfect place. I mean, I know that obviously it's going to be a multi-sport venue. I know they still have basketball games there. I know you've got the Sprint Center as well. So I don't get, you
Yeah.
know,
The thing of it is, when it comes to it, it's
and
not.
I know Kemper's old too.
Well, it's not even so much that they're old. It sucks because 1974 is considered old for a stadium now, when in reality, that's actually pretty darn good.
Right.
But when I look at it, or I guess now we should say the Hy-Vee Arena. Yeah, no, I'm still calling it Kemper Arena. So the capacity is just over 8,000 now.
Yeah, that ain't gonna work.
It used to hold up to 20,000 people for the longest time. But now in 2017, I believe it was, they converted a lot of it to youth sports and a community gym facility. They did a lot of developments to help out locally for the
The funny
city.
the funny thing is if it holds 8,000 people, let's say that's capacity, it's still a bigger arena than where the Coyotes are playing now, sharing an arena with the Arizona State Sun Devil hockey team. The Coyotes cannot put their logo anywhere in that arena. All of the advertising revenue and anything around the boards goes to the college. The Coyotes have to get out of Arizona.
I will say this though, I like Arizona
Move to
State Sun
Quebec.
Devils.
Well, right.
But no, I totally get what you're saying. And you know what? This is my issue with them going to Quebec. First, I want to say one more thing about Kansas City in regards to this. Also, if they go to, let's just say they went to the Kemp Arena, and you said it seats about 8,000. What's funny is that little arena now can still hold more people or more people would attend that game than the massive Coliseum would hold for the Oakland Athletics.
Boy, going back to
With
last week,
Going
yeah.
back to last week where we talked about the fact that they just had about an average of 4 to 5,000 fans a game.
And go to
Anyway,
the very top of the stadium and you yourself. Well, never mind. Look it up. Yeah. Look it up online.
look it up online because we sure as hell aren't going to show it here.
Nope, can't do that.
Nevertheless, I
Can't
will
do that.
say, it's interesting you brought up Quebec. One of the reasons the Quebecs or the Nordiques
Ah,
eventually did not work out in the end. First off, I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna look this up because if there's one thing I do miss about the NHL, like from 20 years ago, a lot of these teams' logos. My favorite still has to be the Hartford Whalers.
yep.
But at the same time, if I had to pick a team that would probably be like a second or a third, I mean, folks, let me just tell you right now, and I'm about to share this with you.
The blue in with the hockey stick.
How can you not love this?
Yeah, the blue and red in.
That is a pretty dope hockey logo for the
Yep.
Quebec Nordiques.
The Nordiques.
It screams 90s retro. That's
Boy,
what
it
it
sure
screams.
does.
90s and 80s. Like any people that grew up loving hockey back then knows what that team is.
Or like
Never
the Canadians one, Les Habitants. Montreal's never got old either. Just the C, the H, that's
Yeah. And
I love the Hartford Whalers one. The whale was great. You got to find it. You got to find it and share it. Let's see.
I'm doing it right now because
I didn't
the
I didn't
best.
even mind the Atlanta Thrashers one. I thought the whirlwind with the Thrasher and the hockey stick was actually pretty cool. But
So here is the Hartford Whalers.
I like the classic San Jose Shark one too.
Yeah. The classic San Jose Shark was a good one. There's so many classic ones. Let me put it up here. Decided it's like, oh no, we're not gonna share that one. Like, oh, why the hell not? Okay, we're gonna try it this way. And this is my thing with the whole situation with you mentioned with the Coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
Ownership's given up on them, the city's given up on them.
Pretty much.
It's time for them to go. And yes, if it weren't for the stadium issue, nevertheless, here's the Whalers logo. That is my
Whale.
favorite.
The Hartford
That
Whale.
I absolutely love this logo, folks. I don't care. Just I love the Blues. They're my favorite team, ride or die. But I'm telling you right now, this freaking logo, I miss the Hartford Whalers, man. Oh
Well,
my gosh.
it's funny that we're talking about retro logos
Is that
because,
so?
yes. So, I mean, I have the retro Blues sweater on with the patches and everything. So, if you've been paying attention to Blues Facebook page and their Twitter post and on Instagram, so the NHL has once again teamed with Adidas, who is the sweater, because we all know in hockey we wear sweaters, not jerseys. With Adidas to come up with a reverse retro 2.0 sweater, and apparently the Blues one is going to be yellow. So,
Oh boy.
I don't have the logo in front of me.
I
On
have
the
the beanie that you were going to talk
Yeah,
about.
that's kind
That
of the
one I do
logo.
have.
So from what I understand, that is the logo they're looking at, and I cannot wait to own one of these, preferably a Jordan Kyrou one.
Yeah, so this is what the beanie, which I know James was going to get into next.
Yes,
This
that
is
logo is sweet.
this is what the retro reversal is looking like.
So,
And then you have what the back of it would the beanie would look like. And these are
and
leaked
that's the old
photos of it.
NHL logo, the retro
Yeah,
NHL logo. So,
right.
what
So
what initially that logo is so when the Blues inception took place in 1967, there were sweaters that were created and that logo was created, and they never wore the logo. Ultimately, the logo that the Winter Classic jerseys have and their alternate jerseys have are the ones that they wore, which is similar to this, but it's the light blue and the yellow. So yeah, so apparently that is supposed to be announced tomorrow. I went back and watched the last video, and if you pay real close attention, you can see the yellow. So that should be interesting. Everybody, nobody likes the one I have on. Everybody says it either looks like it's a McDonald's uniform or this or that. I mean, we heard all that stuff from back in the 90s. Of course, the first sweater I ever owned was a home white, and it was a Curtis Joseph sweater.
let me tell you something. If
I
I
have a
had
thing for goaltenders.
let me tell you something right now. If I had a Happy Meal as a kid and I got a Cujo jersey out of it, you ain't gonna get a complaint out of me ever. Like
I love it. It's like, oh, there can't be red in the sweaters because their name is the Blues. Hello, it has nothing to do with the color. It is a musical heritage thing, you idiots. God, sorry.
people.
No, yeah, everybody's got to look. You know how those people are. They just got to
They
find
started
something to
becoming
complain
fans of
about.
they started becoming fans of the Avalanche when they won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, or they were
And or
bandwagoners
they
and
didn't
became
or they don't know that they've already won a Stanley Cup before this one.
true, or they don't understand the definition and the reason why they throw octopi on the ice in Detroit,
Oh God.
or why they throw rats in Florida. Not
I
real
mean,
ones, plastic
I
ones.
I mean, because Ozzy Osbourne's at the games. He wants to eat them. I don't know.
No,
Yes,
he
I know it was a
rats, not
bat, but
bats.
still, I know. But you let
And
him
he
on
did get
that.
arrested in Memphis wearing a blue sweater. Funny enough, the retro reverse logo.
You know what? Okay, yep, we're pulling that one up too. Okay, you just had to say that because
Yeah, well,
it is literally like a piece of his that is a piece of history right
I
there.
agree. Yeah, his Shelby
No,
County mugshot wearing a blue shirt.
yes, I think nothing. One of the greatest things I've seen is like imagine that you're a police officer and you are arresting
Hey,
Ozzy Osbourne dressed like this. I'll dig it.
I'll right.
I mean, God, that was look at that 1984. Jesus.
Hey, that was back in the days of like Bernie Federico.
I love Bernie. Nevertheless, okay, I wanted
Yeah,
to.
we got completely away from breaking down tonight's game and everything.
Well, no, well that yes, and I think in a future episode we're also going to have to do a whole thing on retro just for the hell of it. And
Yeah, man.
we definitely want fan interaction on that one like crazy.
Dude, that would be a blast.
But I really want to say the thing quickly about Quebec. We were talking about how the NHL market's expanded.
Right.
It's a new resurgence because instead of teams moving as much, you're just getting expansion teams.
Yeah.
It's something the NBA is almost on the verge of doing as well.
Mm-hmm.
I look at Quebec, and the only reason the Nordiques have not come back and why they struggled at the end was because, at least for the Montreal Canadiens, it is a French and English market.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're in Quebec City, Quebec, 99% of it is basically French.
Yep.
Which, while there's nothing wrong with that, we're putting that on record. We're just saying, from the NHL standpoint, it's a lot harder to market. They had they only had one English newspaper, I believe. Yep. The radio stations were all in fluent French. So broadcasting a Quebec Nordiques game was just an uphill battle if you were outside that market.
Yeah.
And aside from locally, and this is always the problem. Locally, they had such a loyal fan base. Like that's and you may say, well, how's that a problem? Because it's just local. Yep. You think the big league cares about if Quebec City or Hartford or even have a loyal fan base? Not if it doesn't bring enough money in.
Right.
Atlanta is not a hockey town, and I know it. And I'll be honest, I'm sorry, it didn't work as well with the Flames. And this has come from a guy who does like the Flames, but my dad remembers going to Atlanta Flames games back, in the 70s. He actually, believe it or not, he attended their last game in Atlanta.
Wow.
It was a playoff loss, I believe. Nevertheless, and then you wait 25, almost 30 years, and then boom, you get yourself the Thrashers.
And they had talent.
They did have talent, but eventually,
guys like Danny Heatley and Keith Tkachuk played for them, and they had plenty of Patrick Heatley, or not Patrick Heatley, Danny Heatley. Who was the other guy? I can't think of. Danny Heatley, Keith Tkachuk. I can't think of his name. But I mean, Evander Kane even played for them.
Yep.
Bet you wouldn't have bet on that one.
So there was talent. Like you said, there was a lot of talented, well-known guys that played on the team. I think it was just to put together a consistent roster. Once again, it also just came down to ownership.
Yeah.
Poor ownership at the end, which is why the Coyotes are failing miserably.
Oh, God, yes.
The Coyotes are basically, and this is like no animal pun intended, but the Coyotes are bleeding dry.
Yeah. Well,
like you brought up the great point about the advertising revenue. They are getting nothing back.
This may be a situation, too, where the NHL has to step in like they did with the Blues back in '83 before the Solomon family come along, because this could be a situation where, I mean, remember back then the Blues, they were trying to move them to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And, they're like, no, that's a small market. We can't do this.
You're telling me that's a small market.
Well, that was the year, too, where the Blues sent representatives to the draft, but they didn't draft anybody. And there was a lot of talent in that draft. But this may be a point where in time the NHL has to step in and take over ownership and be like, look, we've got to do something here, because there's not another team. Like there's not a team. Well, I was going to say there's not a team in Nevada, but there is now with Vegas. But move them to a hot. I mean, look, North Dakota and South Dakota do not have teams. Those are college hockey hotbeds. I mean, Warroad, where guys like TJ Oshie, Patrick Taves come out of. Not Patrick Taves.
Jonathan Taves.
Thank you. I was getting him and Kane mixed up. Imagine that.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So, those guys, that is a hockey hotbed. Move them back. I know you've got the Minnesota Wild in Minnesota, which is a state over, but there are so many places that would support that hockey team, and they would make tons of revenue.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could even move them to I mean, you could move them to Iowa, and they would have built-in rivalries. Yeah,
Can
they're not known for a big hockey market, but they would have built-in rivalries, which would ultimately draw people.
Can
You
I
have
just say, and I'm sorry to cut you off, when you talk about where you can move them, a perfect city I think you can move, and it's a team, and it's a city that has a big market, very beautiful city, and I think like I said, it's in a region where there's not a lot of professional teams. Salt Lake City.
I was getting ready to say that. That is
Move
the
them to
one
Salt
city to
Lake
just love.
City. Move them
They
to
could
Salt
share
Lake
the
City,
building with the
Utah.
Jazz.
Exactly. Share it with the Jazz, so you don't have to build a whole new arena. You already got rivalries with Vegas. You got rivalries with the Avalanche. I mean, because the Jazz got a rivalry already with the Denver Nuggets in the NBA.
True.
So I think that would work. And then, or even on top of that, you'll have all the college kids coming in from BYU, coming in and watching professional
That's a good
hockey.
point.
So Utah is also a underrated sports state. And I think adding an NHL team there would be perfect. And
Right.
you look at these states, I'm glad you mentioned the Dakotas too, because North Dakota especially, people underestimate because there's not as many people in it. Look at like North Dakota State, for example. Probably one of the most underrated yet fun teams in college football.
Yeah.
This team year after year goes undefeated and finally is getting the recognition they deserve. They're finally getting like some really good NFL prospects coming out of the college. Products, there you go, like players coming out of it.
Carson Wentz and Trey Lance came out of there.
Yes, they did. And if it wasn't for injuries, honestly, these guys wouldn't be half too bad.
That's right.
And Carson Wentz has had a good year up until, once again, another injury.
Right.
Who would have thought? But no. And I think also if you brought a team to Salt Lake City or even North Dakota, what would happen is you would bring in the fans from states such as Montana, Idaho, that right now, before the Kraken came to Seattle, you didn't really have anybody for them to cheer for. Because think about it, the closest teams to them as far as NHL goes were the Canucks and the Avalanche.
Right. And the thing is like they had like Western Hockey League teams there. The Seattle Thunderbirds played there. But again, you're talking about a junior hockey team, and that's fine to get behind them, and support them, obviously. But they showed they could. And I think what really drove the city of Seattle to bring in another team was when they lost the Supersonics to Oklahoma City, because that arena sat empty. Now they've built CPA, which is Climate Pledge Arena. It's the first it's the first green arena. They use it's a low energy usage. They recycle everything. It's a very eco-friendly arena, which is great. And they have packed this thing. Yes, the Kraken are not a very good hockey team. The Blues will be reunited with a couple of their former teammates in Vince Dunn and Jaden Schwartz tonight, which are two players on the team that have been productive. You will see when you watch this team tonight, they are fast, they're gritty, and as Darren Payne would say, they have a lot of small guys with gumption. So, it may not be a pushover for the Blues. They may win by, more than 2 goals for betting purposes. I need them to. But nonetheless, you're going to see a team that is fun to watch, and they're fast. They also have 2 pretty good goaltenders in Philip Grubauer and Martin Jones. Grubauer had spent time with the Colorado Avalanche and the Washington Capitals, and Martin Jones recently, of course, with the San Jose Sharks. So they've got talent. They've just got to put it together. And like I said, they're a fun team to watch, and they're fast. But, they're an upstart team. They didn't have the draft, and they didn't have the advantage that the Vegas Golden Knights had when they come into the league and had it kind of set up and found every loophole in the world to get top-notch talent that, Seattle just didn't have the opportunity to get.
Right, but I think also at the same time, it kind of makes Seattle fun to watch because you get to see these guys, a lot of them build up alongside the veteran talent that they've acquired.
Yep.
I
also think owners weren't going to make that mistake again.
That is true. There and yeah, I was gonna say they're like, look, all right, we got screwed over on this whole Vegas Golden Knight thing. What's the best way to prevent this from happening again?
Right.
So with all that, there is one thing I also wanted to talk about, and that is what's going on with the NFL and the owners.
Oh, okay.
So, well, actually, before we get into that, I know you have something you want to talk about regarding the NFL.
No, I have nothing. Go ahead.
Oh, he has
You're
the
good.
smile.
Go
Okay.
ahead. I'm not going to talk
right.
about your Cleveland Browns. I will not do it.
You're okay, and I'll be sure to make sure that you know what we have, unlike you, we have a healthy offensive line.
You have a what?
A healthy offensive line
Yes, true.
and
But
running backs.
yeah, we're trying to trade Cam Akers. You guys can have him if you want him.
Yeah, okay, because we're really gonna. I swear, if it's Kareem Hunt for Cam Akers, I'm gonna be pissed. Okay.
Actually,
No,
the Rams have been implicated in trying to trade for Christian McCaffrey.
Christian McCaffrey, yeah. That's the bit. Okay, run.
If that
CMC.
happens, man, you know it's gonna. I'm gonna be happy as can be.
We're gonna see James on the show with a Christian McCaffrey Rams jersey.
I better
that hasn't
not.
even that hasn't even hit the market yet.
I've got too many jerseys in my closet now, so I better not.
You can never have too many.
Well,
you just need a bigger closet.
And a quarterback who loves massages.
Yeah.
Jack's history decided to throw that one out there. Yeah, we need to talk about Deshaun and another charge against him.
No,
Dude, he can't get out of trouble.
Well, to be fair, this also happened when he was with Houston still. I'm not saying he's not like staying out of trouble, but at the same time, let's not act like this just happened 2 weeks ago. This is a case that was added on from the original situation.
I wasn't trying to rub you the wrong way.
You did. You'd have to at least take me out to dinner first.
Well then, all right. I stand corrected.
And that's what I thought. Now then, folks, we are going to what we were going to talk about, and that is you think the players or what's going on with the players is crazy? Let's talk about what's going on with the owners.
Your defensive coordinator needs to be fired, by the way.
Yeah, first off, it's my obligatory weekly fire Joe Woods.
Yeah, he's got to go. I watched the All 22, and my God, I don't understand how Bailey Zappi, really?
Freaking Joe Woods is going to give me a brain hemorrhage. Oh,
is he under contract for more than 1 year going forward?
He's been on. I think this might be his last year, but I know he's been here since 2020, and which sucks. It's weird because last year they had the number 5 overall defense. So how the hell has it gone from number 5 to like number 30?
Too much talent not utilized correctly. That's how.
But at the same time, if most of the talent is still there and the coordinator is still there, what's different?
The play calling.
Yeah, it's just
that's got to be it.
Yeah, it has to be. It's just the lack of proper communication. Also, Anthony Walker's injury. Yeah, Jack's history says Shaq Griffin will give him one as well.
That was a tough loss for them this past week too.
It really was. That was
Matt Ryan to Pierce with like a minute to go in the game.
Not even like 30 seconds to go in the game.
Right.
Speaking of teams that lost with less than 30 seconds in the game. Yeah.
You don't have to do this, Jeremy. You do not have to do this.
Yes, I do. You want to talk about teams? I mean, it's simple.
We put up 49 points and lost.
Let me just tell you. Look, I'm going to be honest. I found a beautiful, lovely, there was a lot that went on this week. And probably one of the most beautiful sights I saw was the fans in Tennessee tearing down the goalpost after they beat Alabama, baby.
You don't have to do this.
They can roll tide the hell out of Knoxville.
You don't have to do this.
Let me tell you something. That is the most points the 52 points Alabama allowed, most in the game since 1909. They deserved it.
And somehow, some way, we will find a way to make the Final Four, and Tennessee will not.
Yeah, you know what? You guys could lose 3 more games and you'll still make the Final Four.
No, I wouldn't go that far this year.
Yes, you would. Yes,
Nah.
you would. You could lose 3 more games because the whole college football thing. Look, you can't ever tell me. Say what you want about sports entitlement. That's a whole other conversation when it comes to college football.
Hey, I never said that. If we win the SEC title, if we go to Atlanta and win the SEC title, we should be in the Final Four.
It's unbelievable. Okay, nevertheless, yes. Tennessee had an amazing upset victory over the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yep.
And I tell you, folks, it was beautiful.
Yeah,
I loved every second of it. Although I will admit the winning field goal was probably the worst kicked ball I've ever seen.
Oh my God. I really thought it was going to fall short. Yeah.
From the angle of it. Obviously it did right what it was supposed to do and went right down the middle. But as far as the trajectory, as far as the angle of the ball, most awkward kick I might have ever seen in my life.
So NFL owners.
Yeah, I know. I had to. Yeah.
That's fine. You're good. I can take it.
As he is going to lash out at me off screen after the show.
I'm good. My Rams won. I'm happy.
That is true. Okay, the NFL owners. Everybody's favorite owner, not named Stan Kroenke or Jerry Jones or Robert Kraft or Jim Irsay. God, these owners are terrible. Anyway, is Dan Snyder of the Washington Commanders / football team / name we cannot give away because it's 2022. There you go.
God,
nevertheless,
terrible.
So Dan Snyder is known for doing a lot of things, not many of them good, some of them worse.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is just the absolute crap stain that is known as FedEx Field. A poorly run stadium by the organization, on top of the absolute mismanagement of the franchise, as well as a lot of controversial scandals behind the scenes. Most recently, an article came out by ESPN that Daniel Snyder has now refuted, saying that not all of it's true, saying that he had dirt, but he had hired private investigators to grab up dirt on all 31 owners to basically say, look, if I'm going out, you guys are going too.
Yep.
This is basically a hostile takeover type thing where Dan Snyder knows his time is limited as an NFL owner, and he's trying to just do whatever he can to create all this stuff, all this mess as possible. Now, blackmail. And in a statement released by Snyder recently, he also said, when he refuted the claims, he also said, even though from a competition standpoint, we all are against each other, we all still love football, and that's why we're all together. We love the game. Okay. Thing of it is, you do not love your organization. Between everything that has gone on, and you may wonder, well, what are some of those things? Okay, well, the naming controversy, the defamation suit in 2011,
I'm sorry, I was reading the comment that Jack's history added.
What is Jack's history? The dirt.
That's a good one. Oh man. Jesus, probably too soon.
Is it?
Oh man.
And then there's a bunch of environmental issues targeting. The other thing we just talked about was the targeting other owners, the financial improprieties, the just terrible backstage work culture in the organization. I mean, this guy.
And don't forget the issues that they had with the cheerleaders and stuff there, and
the
sexual harassment claims and everything else. I mean, this guy's a real tool.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to put it.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, so in the NFL, it requires 24 of the 31 owners to remove another owner from his position. And when you look at what Colts owner Jim Irsay said, he stated he feels like, given Snyder's basic attitude lately and his recent actions and everything, there is enough merit for it.
Yep.
whether or not it is true that he has blackmail dirt on the other 31 owners or not, the actions of Dan Snyder have clearly damaged the integrity because, I mean, what little integrity these greedy bastards have left.
The Shield.
Yeah, it's damaged the Shield. And at the end of the day, and we're not talking about Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins' 2014 Shield. We're talking about the NFL Shield that somehow survived over 100 years and is under more fire now than ever. Between their concussion, the lack of awareness of concussions, the lack with everything regarding whether it's the owners, Deshaun Watson, how harsh they were on Calvin Ridley because the gambling isn't really that bad of an issue to suspend him all year. Nevertheless, when it comes to Daniel Snyder and the Commanders, I really do think the one that really is the lack of proper conditions at FedEx Field, because you're expected to have 70,000 fans to watch a last place team, at the very least have a decent stadium, but there is raw sewage falling from the rafters below to the sections below during rain games, and nobody bats an eye besides the fans who unfortunately can't do anything about it.
It's true.
So here's my thing, James. Do you feel it's going to eventually come down to where they're going to have an emergency vote to oust Dan Snyder from owning the Commanders?
Yes. And I think it's coming sooner than later. Apparently, Jerry Jones isn't a big fan of him either. And, I look, Jerry Jones is one of the slimiest guys in the NFL. And if he's got a problem with you, then you probably need to go. And, I think that's, and I use the word slimy because, he's just that kind of guy. But yeah, I think it will. And I think it comes down to the fact that you have guys like Jim Irsay, and you don't think of the Colts owner as a carry a big stick when it comes into these meetings and stuff like that, and have a lot of pull and a lot of, just overall, I guess, swag, if you will, with the other owners, but he does. And I think it wouldn't surprise me in the next couple of weeks if you don't see a motion made, probably with the league office to try to remove him. I mean, look, we all used to think that Al Davis in Oakland was bad, and now his son. Look, Daniel Snyder is just an overall different level of just yuck.
The thing with Al Davis, okay, the reason Al Davis had the reputation he did was for two reasons. Number one, it was because the "Just Win, Baby" motto was happening when the Raiders were 4-12.
Yep.
In addition to back when they were actually, you go back to the 80s and 70s when they were really good.
And John Madden.
When John Madden was coaching and Tom Flores was coaching. But it was also during the times when, after the 2002 Super Bowl against the Buccaneers, after the John Gruden era, when these guys just started to go 3-13, 4-12, 2-14, like they were absolute garbage.
Yep.
And it was still just win, baby. The reason Al Davis, I'd put him on like any other owner in not even just football, but in sports, because he fought for what was right and wasn't afraid to step on people's toes to do it.
Right.
Whether it was for the sake of civil rights. I mean, this is the guy who was innovative by hiring one of the first black head coaches,
Art Shell,
and then, like I said, hired Tom Flores, who was Hispanic.
Right.
And there's a lot of firsts that have occurred within the Raiders organization as far as innovation in the front office. Al Davis was also the leader of the Foolish Club, the original AFL owners, and he was the one who was basically taking on the NFL.
Yeah.
And he wasn't afraid to. You look at Jim Irsay. You talk about how he doesn't exactly have that, how people think he doesn't have that much swagger. You're absolutely right that he does. The Colts have been in the Irsay family for multiple generations now. This dates back to when they were in Baltimore, when they were the Baltimore Colts.
Yep.
When Robert Irsay owned the team. So obviously, you as the commissioner, Roger Goodell, are going to take what the Ursay family in this regard has to say quite seriously. If Jerry Jones, who, like you said, slimiest, greediest, most probably one of the most punchable faces out there when it comes to greedy owners, yeah. If he doesn't like you, it could be for one of two reasons. Either Jerry Jones does actually acknowledge something's wrong here, or he just realizes he can't control Dan Snyder like he does Roger Goodell, and he wants him
Right.
out.
Right.
I could go either way on that one. That's what I think.
Well, the funny thing is,
Nevertheless,
it puts Goodell in a weird spot, Jeremy, because I mean, ultimately, the NFL commissioner Roger Goodell works for those 32 owners. They are, they are, they are his paycheck, but ultimately, something has to be done. I mean, we talk about Jerry Jones being slimy. Him and Stan Kroenke are what we would refer to as strange bedfellows, and if they've got a problem with you, you must be pretty damn bad, because those two are the worst of the worst of the worst, man.
yeah. But and the thing of it is, you're with Stan Kroenke, as bad as he is, his was just greed.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. It's bad. Greed is bad. There's a reason
Right.
It's one of the 7 deadly sins.
Right.
Greed is bad. And he screwed over millions of people, or at least hundreds of thousands of people, but maybe millions of fans who like the St. Louis Rams. But he definitely screwed over St. Louis in so many ways.
Right.
Nevertheless, with Daniel Snyder, it's crossing the line from anything greedy into just immoral.
Yeah.
You mentioned everything regarding the cheerleaders and the sexual harassment. You talk about the poor conditions of FedEx Field. We talk about basically everything with getting the blackmail dirt on owners, and hiring private investigators. And like you said, now when he refutes those claims that ESPN had published, it's like, well, I know this ain't true. Well, this didn't happen yet. Well, it's like, whether it has or hasn't, it's out there now, and they're going to be looking at you the wrong way, or in the other perspective, the right way.
Yeah.
From this point on, because now when you're going after a player, it's one thing. It's not right, but you're going after a player. As long as the 32 businessmen and women that are in those offices are protected, they really don't care as much. But once one of them gets affected, everyone else gets affected, because then you realize, look, it could be you next. And we haven't heard much from other owners on the issue. A lot of the other ones have been quieter on the issue. You have like the like the Hunt family, the McClaskey family for the Bears, for example. But you've heard it from Jerry Jones, you heard it from Irsay, and those are two perfect personalities right there to really have a statement on the matter, And so, yes, Roger Goodell is at a point where he's going to, if enough of these owners call for a vote, that they're going to have one. Goodell cannot just back down. Like you said, James, he's there, or they are his paycheck. The commissioner is not there for the owners. The owners are there for the commissioner. Like, in the sense that he is just almost the figurehead to regulate things.
Right.
Which is kind of like how Senator Landis was when Judge Landis was back when he became the first commissioner of baseball.
Right.
So I don't know.
It'll be interesting over the next couple of weeks to see what comes out of this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and by the way, just an update: Brett Favre still stole millions of dollars from people in Mississippi and the poor state of America.
I think we'll have an answer to that in the next couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say within the next week or two, we're gonna keep you posted on that. So definitely, but we have to remind you, because I mean, it's a terrible thing he did.
Yep.
He's an asshole for it. And
I was gonna say those two deserve each other.
Yes, they do. Match made in hell, right there, folks.
Yep.
With that, also, before we close, I do want to say, unless you have a different score update, it is 1-1. Astros and Yankees are still tied.
Still 1-1?
Still 1-1, thanks to our lovely, no longer Cardinal, Harrison Bader. God, it just breaks my heart.
Jeremy, funny thing, and I know we're getting ready to close up shop here and get ready for the Blues Kraken. The next time Hollywood sees you, Hollywood will be a year older.
That is true.
It's starting to be like Holly old instead of like Hollywood. I'm so tired, Jeremy.
It's been one of those, folks. It's been one of those weeks for James, and
Man, it sure has.
in some ways, I can't blame him. Don't worry, buddy. Baseball season will be over soon enough.
I get on the road tomorrow.
Like I said, it'll be soon enough. It's not going to be tomorrow soon, but it'll be soon enough.
No.
I mean, well, just think about this. If the World Series goes to 7 games, it's going to extend till November 5th.
I know.
It is October 19th right now.
I'm going to go play my role as the Cowardly Lion this weekend.
Oh, gosh. Folks, let me tell you, that is a sight to see.
Oh, boy.
But whenever there's a low pitch, he just tells them to put him up.
Yeah. I like that one. Oh, goodness.
James, you got anything you want to close with?
No, I'm good. You got a prediction for tonight's Blues Kraken game?
I feel that the Blues are going to win 4-2.
Okay, 4-2.
I got the Blues winning 4-2. I think Seattle does knock a couple in, but I do see the Blues controlling the majority of the game.
Yeah, before we go, let me see if I've got any updates here on Buchnevich. I haven't seen anything else. I knew it was going to be a game time. I know a game time decision. I know in the intermission of the game that's on TNT right now, they spoke to Braden Shin.
Well, it's interesting when you bring up Buchnevich. When he was the first star in Game 1. He was the number 1 star in Game 1. And when Panger talked to him about that, he was saying that it should have been Bennington.
It should always be Bennington, is what he said. I really like that. It should
always be Bennington. I love that. That just shows. And, one last thing while you're looking that up, more details about the game. There was talk that the Blues were going to get rid of Take Me Home Country Roads at the Enterprise Center. Well, they blasted it with about a minute and a half to go in the opener. The crowd was into it the entire time. I am so look. Some people are annoyed with it. I could hear that song all day. I love "Take Me Home, Country Roads" by John Denver.
I was weird about it at first because I'm like, what is this? But it's really grown on me, and I obviously you always look forward to hearing it. Now, I cannot find anything at all. Let's look up Jeremy Rutherford's Twitter handle real quick here and see if he's got any updates.
And for those tuning in at home, I want you to really start thinking in mind some of your favorite retro teams, logos, designs, because I think we'll do this. You know what? It's perfect because next week will basically be our Halloween episode. So what we're going to do for next Wednesday, we're going to do one where it's going to be some of the best and iconic logos. You know what? And on top of that, we're going to do some of the worst. We're going to have some of the worst, some of the best. We have to have some of the worst on there.
I agree.
Because
still no news on Pavel Buchnevich, either from Rutherford or Lou Korak, who are both Blues insiders. So I guess this is going to be a true game time decision. If he does not play, I would expect Josh Levo to be in there, but I hope he plays because, that line of Thomas, Tarasenko, and Buchnevich in Game 1 certainly was dynamic.
It's interesting. You want to talk about the worst sports logo. And I'm sorry. This one has to be it. And
what you got?
This one, it may not be the number one, but you cannot tell me this is not on the list. Hang on. Here we go.
What in the blue hell is that atrocious being?
That, and I'll put it up there again for all the lovely fans to see, is the old school Detroit Tigers logo.
That thing looks as scared of its own reflection as I am looking at it.
Look at it. It's so
It's
ugly.
Puny. All right, so one, it's puny. Two, he's like, do I really have to represent this terrible ass team? And two, or 3 rather, he's like, can I at least get somebody who can actually draw? What
Oh,
year is this from? Or what
uh,
fourth grade class?
well, I believe that was from the 20. You think that's bad?
Oh,
Okay, this one
gee.
looks depressed.
He
This
does. He
one
looks
looks
sad.
this one looks possessed.
What the hell is that? Is that the same thing?
Next
Looks
week's
like a
show's going
chupacabra or something. What in the blue hell? Who are what?
That is what we have to look forward to next week. I'm telling you, James, we're putting it out there for everybody tuning in.
Oh my God.
So next week on October the 26th, it is going to be Roundabout Sports, presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media's special Halloween episode.
That thing almost looked like Meatwad from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Oh,
what
God.
in the blue hell is that? My God.
We're going to have the best and worst sports logos on the show. I want you to submit who you think some of them are. We're going to put them on the show. I'll be honest, though, the ones that definitely have a little bit of a racial part to them, we're going to show less than others because, it is 2022.
So, all right, hang on. So now I've got to bring this up, and I think you know where I'm going.
No.
I like him, or I liked him. He no longer exists in professional baseball.
Oh, I know. Chief Nakahoma.
No.
Oh.
I love Chief Wahoo.
I thought you were going to say Chief Nakahoma. I like
no. Okay. Chief Wahoo of the now defunct Cleveland Indians was great because when I see Chief Wahoo, the first thing I think of is Major League. The Indians weren't any good.
Yeah, but
you
the
think
Guardians are. No, I'm just saying they would have won in '95 if it wasn't for the fact that it was Chief Wahoo. No. Okay, folks, we can't spoil too much. All I'm gonna just close it with is this. No. Okay. That's it. We have to end it with a beautiful logo. And I'm telling you right now, this might be one of the best freaking logos you will ever see. And James is thinking to himself, oh no, what is Jeremy doing?
I don't know.
I promise you this one is not like scary or anything. Okay?
The 80s Cardinals logo.
That is what I'm talking about. That is retro, old school. I love it.
Or even the Blues logo I'm wearing.
Even the Blues logo James is wearing.
Yep.
I just got the I bleed, which we all bleed, but I bleed blue. There we go. All right, folks. That's going to do it this week on Roundabout Sports. Before we go, as always, we want to always talk about that we always put up at the end of every week. We have the NAMI hotline for National Association for Mental Illness, and the helpline is 1-800-950-NAMI. That is 1-800-950-NAMI. The National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's open 24/7, 365. And then, of course, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, dial 988. Used to be a longer phone number, but just dial 988 now. They've shortened it. Understand you're never alone. All it takes is one message or one phone call to reach out to somebody and understand that you're never alone out there. Somebody out there is always willing to listen, to help, and to show that you matter in this earth and that you are loved. And with all deep sincerity, James and I are always appreciative and blessed to be able to do this every single week. And in a way, and it's a big stress reliever for us as well. It's just an absolute blessing. So we want to thank you all for tuning in this evening. And be sure to tune in next week when we have our special Halloween edition. I'm the maestro, Jeremy Karp. He's Hollywood James Knox. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. And remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading.